This is Bedtime Stories, Grownup Edition, Queenpin 2.0, Bonus Episode 2, Part 1. When we left off in Part 15, Tru, Salima, and Woody were telling the Queen Mother how Tru ended up in the hands of the Colombians. Jose's plan to keep her in Venezuela under the watchful eye of the Morenas' men fell apart when she got a call from Donovan, aka Max, letting her know that her father was seriously ill and in the hospital. A few episodes back, Big Wood told Tru that she had to pick a person who she'd keep in the loop about her whereabouts and her itinerary, just in case something were to go wrong and her family and friends needed to be notified. And we learned that Pastor Corey was the person she chose. Her sister Indira had been trying to get in contact with her to notify her about her father's health, and unable to get in contact with her, she tried to contact Stephanie. Having the same results, she contacted LJ. She had no idea that Rennie was out of the mental hospital, and when she asked LJ about her sister's whereabouts, LJ told her that she was working with Stephanie out of the country. Since Indira knew that Stephanie worked for Angela, she assumed that Tru was working for Angela too. Since LJ wasn't new to this, he played the role, like he had a way to get in contact with the boss or the manager or somebody associated with the business who'd be able to get in contact with Tru. He called Donovan, and we all know how that went. Pastor Corey decided that with the situation with Tru's father being so critical, it was time that he and baby Kari take a trip back home to North Carolina. Baby Kari was 4 months old, and Pastor Corey felt comfortable traveling back home with an infant. He had this daddy thing down pat. While he wanted to support Tru's family, it was also time for him to have some come-to-Jesus conversations with his family. They'd only seen pictures and videos of baby Kari because he wouldn't let them come to Dallas to visit. He didn't want a lot of them, but he did have to protect his wife's reputation. You'd think that after Stephanie upped and left their newborn in the hospital, he'd be bitter and salty, or at the very least, that he'd want to share what he was experiencing with his family members. But like he'd been doing since they were teenagers, he stood in the gap for Stephanie. He told his family members that they couldn't come to visit because Stephanie was having a hard time acclimating to being a new mother. She'd experienced perinatal depression, and now she was experiencing postpartum depression, all of which was true. So while he had no plans to reveal to his family what Stephanie was actually up to, he did intend on letting his family know that Stephanie was having a difficult time and she was getting the help that she needed. He'd been parenting baby Kari alone, but with the assistance of her family and their friends. While everyone else was in the dark, Pastor Corey was not. As soon as Stephanie arrived in Puerto Rico, Pastor Corey got a call from Uncle Manny. And over the 4 months that Stephanie'd been in Puerto Rico, Pastor Corey had the opportunity to speak with Stephanie, FaceTime with her, let her see baby Kari, send her pictures and videos. And while he was indeed pissed, he was also taking Mom Brenda's advice and relying heavily on God and the unction of the Holy Spirit. If you recall, in the Notorious 5, Mom Brenda told him that he just might be having a Hosea and Gomer experience, and it looks like she was right. When Stephanie landed in Puerto Rico, Uncle Manny was waiting for her on the tarmac. Q had called him and let him know that Stephanie was AWOL and headed his way, and Manny was pissed. When Stephanie arrived, she said, "I'm here. I'm not pregnant no more. I'm ready to get it popping. Let's go." Manny said, "Are you out of your damn mind? I feel like I'm having deja vu. My sister, your Aunt Selena, did the very same thing when she had her daughter. There was nothing that I could do to stop my sister Selena, and I couldn't find Jessica to stop her before she did that crazy mess with Angela and Marcus. But I'm gonna stop you. You will not be the head of this family until you've dealt with the issues that would allow you to induce your own labor at home, deliver your baby, and then leave your baby in the hospital, and then leave the hospital against medical advice and fly across the world." Stephanie said, "Wait a minute. In all fairness, I didn't fly across the world. I just flew from Texas to Puerto Rico. And I didn't abandon my baby. She's safe. She's with Corey and Angela. They'll make sure she's good. She'll be there when I get back. This isn't permanent. I'm just trying to go ahead and get a jump on my training. Uncle Manny said, you won't get a jump on your training. What you will get is mental health assistance. Then Manny held up his cell phone and held up a picture of baby Kari and said to Stephanie, look at her. When Stephanie looked at the picture and had no visible reaction, Uncle Manny said, get in the car. When the chauffeur car pulled up outside of an acute inpatient treatment facility for individuals in mental health crisis, Stephanie said, what the hell are we doing here? I understand you think I'm having some kind of mental health episode, but I don't understand why I can't just go back to your estate and consult with my cousin Miranda. She's been treating every damn body else in this family. Manny said, because I consulted with her, and she told me to bring you here. Stephanie said, well, you can't have me admitted against my will. This isn't like the place that Angela sent Rennie. And I'm not checking myself into no damn mental hospital, so you can forget about it. You want me to go back home? Fine, I'll go back home. You want me to be there for what, 6 weeks until my maternity leave is up? I can do that. Manny said, no, I want you to get your mind right. I want you to get your head screwed on straight so that you're actually capable of being the kind of mother that your daughter deserves and being the kind of leader that this family deserves. So you will voluntarily check yourself into this facility, and you'll stay here for however long it takes for the doctors to conclude that you're ready to re-enter society, or you will never be the head of this family. Stephanie said, I don't get it. You told me that I had to be married. You told me that I had to have the baby. You told me that I couldn't bring the baby with me. I did all of the things you told me that I had to do. And now because I'm here as soon as I had the baby, it's an issue? Manny said, you are currently unfit to lead this family. You're unfit to even begin training in order to lead this family. You're unfit to be that baby's mother, as far as I can tell. Before Stephanie could say another word in her own defense, Uncle Manny said, I understand, Stephanie, that all of this makes sense in your mind. I understand your motivation. I understand more than you could ever know. But I lost my sister because no one got her the help that she needed. I will not lose you too. Over the next few months, Stephanie got the help that she so desperately needed. She also got to know the Lopez family a whole lot better and found out a lot more about her family history, including what all went down between Selena and Samuel. How Selena left Salima in Samuel's care in Trinidad, returned to Puerto Rico in an attempt to become the head of the Lopez family, and woke up dead. That Maria and her father Angel's meeting was not by happenstance. And that Rennie and Donovan weren't the only people who she knew who were living with mental health issues. Her oldest sister, Jessica, didn't just inherit her crazy from Maria. In a nutshell, Stephanie and Jessica's brand of crazy ran in the family. When it was all said and done, Stephanie was diagnosed with a mild case of postpartum psychosis that was easily resolved with treatment. But she was also diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder. And here in her family history, doctors believe that her Aunt Selena and her deceased sister Jessica also suffered from this disorder. Learning of that diagnosis put a whole lot in perspective for Stephanie and for the people who loved her, including Angela, Tru, and Rennie. And when they all thought about the environmental factors and the genetics of it all, her behavior over the years made perfect sense. She'd always had fantasies about being in positions of power, finding the perfect mate. She'd seen herself as superior to others. She'd had a tendency of taking advantage of others and being manipulative. And she'd always been arrogant and impatient. And with therapy, she was also able to unpack the secret emotions that she'd never expressed but had clearly been displayed, including insecurity, shame, humiliation, and fear of failure. It was that fear of failure that sent her running for the hills after she delivered her baby. So 4 months later, she'd been released from inpatient treatment for about a month, and she'd been undergoing intense training, courtesy of her Uncle Manny and his team. not to become the head of the Lopez family just yet, because she still had things to work out with her husband, and she still need to figure out how to balance being a mother with being in the life. And that was going to require tutelage from a woman who'd been there and done that. Meanwhile, Big Wood had gotten the call from his handler with the Baptiste family, saying that he needed to get to Colombia for a job where he'd be responsible for leading a team who'd be extracting one person and rescuing another from the hands of the Morena family. But before he got that call, he was in New York City, chopping it up, licking his wounds, and getting the support of his OG. Miss Charlotte knew as soon as she laid eyes on her baby boy that something was rotten in Denmark. Something wasn't clean in the buttermilk. In other words, somebody had did something to her baby, and she wasn't going. She said, "Lil Dro, what's going on with you?" Big Wood said, "I'm good, Ma. I just needed some time. I needed to touch grass, as they say. And you are my grass. Come give me a hug." Big Wood wrapped his arms around Miss Charlotte because he was forever a mama's boy. And absorbing that feminine energy and that love only a mother could give was like a balm to his soul. When he let her go, she said, "Who is she and what the hell did she do?" Big Wood just chuckled and said, "Come on, Ma. You know him." Miss Charlotte cut him off and said, "Don't even start with that. You know I'm not going to tell you about my business mess. You ain't come all this way not to talk. So talk." Big Wood said, "I made the mistake of falling in love with a woman who doesn't love herself enough to even be able to love me back." Miss Charlotte said, "What is with you and picking these women who wouldn't know a good man if he knocked her upside the head and dragged her into a cave?" Big Wood said, "I don't know, Ma." Miss Charlotte said, "You want me to talk to her?" Big Wood said, "Oh, no, don't do that." Miss Charlotte said, "Because I'm telling you right now, I tap dance all over her behind for playing with my baby's heart." Big Wood said, "It's not that she played with my heart, Ma. She actually was upfront and honest about where she was and what she could and couldn't do. It's really my fault because I tried to push the envelope. Too much happened too fast. And I knew when we started this that she was going to have to make some hard choices." Miss Charlotte said, "Are we talking about that girl Tru? The one that you brought with you to Denver?" When Woody got quiet, Miss Charlotte said, "And Tasha had me thinking that y'all wasn't really together." Big Wood said, "Okay, so listen. At first, she was just my mentee. I was training her. In exchange for plugging her with a big job, she agreed to come with me to Denver and pretend to be my girl." Miss Charlotte said, "Boy, you that desperate? As fine as you are and as big as you are, you can't find a woman for real?" Big Wood said, "Ma, it's complicated. My life, you already know this. Don't I look like I feel bad enough already? Don't make it worse." Miss Charlotte said, Okay. "So what happened?" Big Wood said, "She's in a life." Miss Charlotte said, "Well, that'll do it. I don't understand why you can't find you a good girl who not running around killing people. I heard of women liking bad boys, but I can't understand for the life of me why men would like a bad girl." Big Wood said, "I guess for the same reason why Big Dro picked you." Miss Charlotte said, "Don't go there, boy. I hung all that up the minute I found out I was pregnant with your sister." Big Wood, a.k.a. Lil Dro, wasn't born to one gangster. He was born to two. Miss Charlotte had been in the drug game. It's how she put food on the table in the house that she lived in with her mother and her siblings. As the oldest child, she felt responsible for filling in the gap where her mother was falling short. Her mother was an addict, so there were plenty of days when there wasn't any lights, there wasn't any heat, and there wasn't any food to eat. So Miss Charlotte got in the field, and that's where she met Big Dro. Eventually, he retired her from the business, and he held it down until he got locked up. With 3 children to raise and a man on lockdown, Miss Charlotte chose to walk the straight and narrow. She couldn't afford to go back to that life and leave her 3 children without a father and a mother. So Miss Charlotte said to Big Wood, "So what do you plan to do, son? You said you in love with this girl, and I've met her, so I see what you see. And if you ask me, she looks like trouble." Big Wood said, "What you mean, Ma?" Miss Charlotte said, "Oh, she looked like she could be your greatest fantasy or your worst nightmare, depending on what day you run into her and how you move when you do. Believe me, it takes one to know one." When Big Wood told his mother more about Tru, how she's the middle child with 2 older and 2 younger sisters, and about her growing up life, her zodiac sign, and the fact that her first and only love died while she was in college, Miss Charlotte says, "Oh yeah, sounds about right. It also sounds like she's the one. Big Wood said, I just told you that she chose the life. Miss Charlotte said, trust me, son. She'll be back. Then Big Wood got a phone call. It wasn't his handler. It was Pastor Corey. Pastor Corey said, I don't know if you know what Yael has going on. Big Wood said, let me stop you there. She and I are no longer involved. Pastor Corey said, yeah, I know. But Melissa insisted that I call you. Big Wood said, are you anywhere near my brother? Referring to Q. And Pastor Corey said, yeah, he's upstairs. Big Wood said, can you go find him, please? And I'll call you back. And then he hung up the phone. Then he went in his suitcase and grabbed his satellite phone. He called Q on his satellite phone. And when Q answered, he said, so Pastor Corey just called me, trying to tell me something about Tru. He should be finding you shortly. Q met Pastor Corey at the top of the stairs, leading up from his basement apartment in the estate, and handed him the satellite phone. Pastor Corey took the phone and said, hello? Big Wood said, yeah, we only talk about what you're trying to talk about on the satellite. Now what's up? When Pastor Corey told Big Wood about Tru being in Venezuela and then being transferred to the hands of the Colombians, and about her father being in the hospital and on life support, Big Wood said, how the hell am I supposed to find her? Corey said, now that part, I don't know. You on your own with that. I'm calling you because Melissa had a dream and she told me to call you. Wood said, what was the dream? Corey said, something about Tru running on a treadmill with a clock in front of her that was counting down. And she told me to tell you that your favorite girl needs you. Woody was confused. He'd heard what Melissa said to Wise when she referred to Salima as Big Gangsta, and he had a hard time believing that Melissa would somehow think that he called Tru his favorite girl. But he also knew that there was no way that Melissa would know that he called his deceased grandmother his favorite girl. And what nobody knew was that his grandmother was Colombian. His father was a first-generation American. Big Wood was Colombian and black. His grandmother had married a black man and had his father. So looking at him, no one would ever guess that he had Latin roots. He'd been all up and through Colombia as a child. So he immediately started trying to make the connection between his grandmother, Colombia, and Tru. He asked Corey to put Q back on the phone, and when Q got on the phone, he asked, bro, do you mind if I talk to Melissa right quick? Q said, nah, I don't mind at all. And then he went and got Melissa. When Melissa got on the phone, Big Wood said, baby boo, tell me about this dream. When Melissa finished telling Woody about the dream, she said, and you're going to need to take Wise with you, because Big Gangsta going to need him.